when I told my mother about my decision to become a pilot and I would like to do an aviation degree, she was like, "Oh, wasn't expecting that." And she had her concerns, as you correctly pointed it out. It's something rare and something different for like an Asian female to become an airline pilot, right? I was flying all through COVID because despite that we have reduced capacity, we still had to maintain cargo flights. So I was flying a lot of cargo-only aircraft. So basically, we're still using a passenger aircraft, but we have no passengers. We just fly the cargoes. We had to fly the vaccines. There were a small number of passenger flights because people still wanted to come in despite the quarantine, right? I was doing that as well. We had duties such as we call the closed loop duties, which means we do passenger flights and we go on duties for as long as 35 days. During that time, the government said we can't go home because we could be infected with COVID-19 transporting passengers.
Hi, I'm Sharon Landon, and welcome to the Old Asian Lady Show. Today, my guest is Carrie Kwok. Hi, Carrie. Thanks for coming today.
Hi, Sharon. Happy to be here.
Carrie is based in Hong Kong, and she is a pilot for a major airlines in Hong Kong. So I know you were born and raised in Hong Kong. I understand that you also lived abroad, or you went to Australia when you were younger?
Yes, I was born and raised in Hong Kong, but then the family, my parents, my father's work, then had to send him overseas to Brisbane, Australia for just a contract work for a short period, a few years. So the whole family followed him, and we moved to Brisbane in the late 80s. And we stayed there for approximately about only 3 years after his work finished, and we followed him back to Hong Kong. And I continued to my primary and my high school studies in Hong Kong. And in the end, they did send me back to Brisbane to do boarding school when I was about 15, 16 years old. And then I stayed in Brisbane up until I finished university. And I came back to work in Hong Kong afterwards.
Okay, so when you went to Australia, did you speak English, or were you just speaking Cantonese?
I think very minimal English, like I could get by, but I definitely wasn't fluent, or definitely Cantonese was my mother tongue, still is. But yeah, my English level then wasn't very good.
So at 5 or 6, did you go straight into school? Was there like a preschool thing over there? Because now I swear kids are starting school so much earlier. I mean, my girlfriend, her daughter is like 2 or 3, and she's already going to preschool or something.
Yes.
But did you go to school?
No, there wasn't preschool then. So I think I went straight into grade 1. So, which is primary 1. Yeah.
Oh, and was that like just a regular public school?
Yes, it was a public school.
Okay, and how was that for you? I mean, not being able to speak the language that well. I mean, was there any type of challenges for you at that age even, or do you even remember?
I was going to say, don't remember much, but I do remember the teachers and the students, my classmates were very welcoming. They were very nice. Like, I literally was the only Asian there. And I couldn't remember how I got by with my broken English in the first place, but picked it up fairly quickly, as most kids could. And I just remember I have always been a quiet kid. So starting out was quite slow, but it didn't really take long for me to fit in because everyone was just very nice and welcoming.
Okay, that's cool. So you were there for 3 years then. And by
Yes.
the time you left Hong Kong, I guess you're pretty fluent then in English.
Um, yes, when we moved back to Hong Kong, I think I was pretty fluent then in English, I think, if I can remember correctly, yeah.
Yeah, I guess 5 or 6 years old is pretty hard to remember back then.
I
But
still
I
have
remember
fragments of
that.
the memory, but yeah.
But you were the only Asian. You definitely remember that in
I think
Brisbane at the time.
there was one Korean girl, but she was born in Australia, so she was literally an Australian. She just had, face yellow skin and dark hair like myself, but she was
Yeah.
literally I don't think she speaks a word of Korean.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was in Maryland that there was only one or two Asians as well over there. But I was in junior high school and high school at the time. So,
Mhm.
and I spoke English at the time, so maybe it wasn't
It was
as
a bit
bad. So I
easier.
was just,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just curious about your adjustment there. But when you guys came back to Hong Kong,
Mhm.
I mean, were you happy to leave Australia? What was it? Had you adjusted to life over there?
I think I sort of have adjusted to life over there, but back then, being at that age, I didn't really have a choice, right? So I was just following my parents, and I definitely felt more at home in Hong Kong because I went back to I was connected to my social circles again, like the kids I hung around with when I was in, say, kindergarten in Hong Kong. We went back. I rejoined the school, so we were studying at the same primary school again. So I connected with my old friends again. So I felt
Hmm.
probably fitting in more in Hong Kong, if I could put it that way.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense too. So you said that you also went back to Australia, really, and what was the decision that was made for you going back to Australia?
Basically, we were quite fortunate because during the times when we were in Australia, we were able to get a citizenship in Australia as well. So naturally, having the passport uh, makes the decision for my parents a little bit easier. First of all, because the schooling system in Hong Kong is quite tough.
Hmm.
I wasn't doing too well at school. I wasn't the best student, and also having
Hmm.
the passport, the Australian passport, allows them to send me to do my high school education in back in Brisbane. So it was really a no-brainer for them just to send me back, so I don't have to endure the tough education system in Hong Kong, and also take advantage of the the Western education as well.
Hmm. Yeah, because I had wondered. That makes a lot of sense now because Hong Kong was so connected with the UK, but that you guys went back. You went to Australia because at this time you already had a um, Australian passport.
Yes.
So so you went. Excuse me. So you went to back school in Australia, and then what was that like? I mean, after you, because you were back in Hong Kong for quite a few years before you went back to Australia. So was that
Mm-hmm.
different experience? Because now you're older. How did that go when you returned?
I definitely didn't want to go back to Australia. Not because it's Australia, just because I was 15 at the time when they wanted to send me back. So I've established my social circle, my life in Hong Kong again, and nobody like changes, right? And I would be going back to Australia to do boarding school, so it would be all by myself. So I didn't like that idea, but obviously I didn't have a choice. But returning, I was familiar with Brisbane to a certain extent, so it wasn't somewhere completely new and different. But I did attend to a different school comparing
Hmm.
to the one I originally attended to, and it was in a boarding school format. So initially, I found it tough, I have to say, because I was away from home. I get homesick. Now I've got to take care of everything by myself, living in a boarding school, right? But
Right.
eventually, I really did enjoy it. Like, and looking back now, I would have done it again probably.
So at the boarding school, then, was it quite international? I mean, was there people coming from all different places, or was it just, Australians there?
Mainly Australians. Mainly,
Okay.
I remember the girls. There were 30 boarders, we call it, in my year. I would say 80% were Australians. They came from, say, outback Australia, different states. The rest of the 20% were from Papua New Guinea. They're Pacific Islanders, like they're from Samoa, they're Fijians, and
Oh,
they're from
okay.
Papua New Guinea. And I was the only Asian. There was this other girl. She's actually ethnically Malaysian, but she's from Papua New Guinea, so I don't consider her Asian at all. So I was
Right.
literally the only Asian girl from Asia.
Again, right?
Again, yeah.
I mean, yeah, and at that age, oftentimes I feel like you in the boarding school, so was it junior high school? I mean, I'm thinking US, but is it junior high school, like ninth,
I
sixth?
joined the boarding school in year 10, so I would
Oh,
say
10.
that's the last 3 years of the high school, maybe a senior high.
Right.
Would that be senior high?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not sure.
Yeah, senior high school starts at ninth grade. I think it's been so long for me to, but
It's slightly different in the States as well.
yeah, is Australia go by the British system, education
They
system?
follow they
Like
follow the British system, so there's no really junior or senior high in Australia
okay, yeah,
or
it's just
Britain. Yeah.
okay. And so it sounded like you adjusted by the time that you were in your first or second year in the
Probably
boarding
took me
school.
6 months. 6 months to
Oh, 6
adjust.
months.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I mean, you said you were there alone and you didn't have any other family in Australia. It was just you.
We had a family friend in Australia, in Brisbane at the same time. But because I was boarding, so the only time she was a very good friend of my mum's, so she knew I was there, and she would try to take me out on the weekend, just to get me out to Chinatown, have some Chinese food and all that. But back in the days, it's pretty, there were no internet. She has to fax in a handwritten, signed letter to tell the boarding school that she's going to take me out. And
Oh,
we
wow.
weren't allowed out unless we had a permission from the guardian, which was her, or from my parents in Hong Kong.
Oh, wow. What year is that? Because that seemed like Middle Ages or something. Was it?
2001, maybe?
Oh, 2001.
I mean,
Wow.
there was internet, but the boarding school didn't have computers. There were like one or two, but with a very slow connection for homework and research purposes. We didn't have our own phones or computers or nothing. But they were still
Yeah.
relying on faxes.
Right. I mean, it just sounds so archaic, really. I mean,
Yeah.
but if you think about it, it's not that long ago, right? And people still
That's
do
right.
faxing.
Yeah, that's right. I
Yeah.
haven't seen a fax
It's,
machine in years.
yeah, because I know we started doing they have online faxing. You just have an assigned number and you can go to this platform and you can just upload your fax. I mean, yeah. Anyway, faxing. But so after you graduated, did you go back to Hong Kong or
I did.
what did you end up doing?
I completed the last year of my university degree remotely in Hong Kong whilst I was working in various fields, just to get a little bit more life experience. So I was working and studying at the same time during the last year of my degree, which was in 2005. Yeah, /2006. I officially graduated in 2007 from university, and I
For the
stayed in Hong
university
Kong.
now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
So I
so I'm
grad.
confused. You graduated from the primary school or the boarding school, and then you also went to university in Brisbane,
Yes,
but you were
yes, I
doing it
did.
remotely.
Not initially. Initially, it was on campus. So after high school, I was doing an on-campus degree still in Brisbane as well. But the last year, I elected to do it remotely back in Hong Kong, so I could work and study at the same time.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what was your degree in?
I did aviation. I did a bachelor in aviation in Brisbane.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, that reminds me then, it's like, did you always want to be a pilot, or when did you decide that you wanted to go that route?
It was a late discovery. I think when it was not until when I was maybe 16 or 17 year old that we had to, it must be 16 because we had to choose our subjects for year 11, year 12, which dictates what sort of degree you can apply for in university.
Oh.
So I discovered it then.
But was it because you were flying somewhere all the time, or yeah, what was it that sparked your interest in that?
General aviation is actually very common and popular in Australia. So during the
Okay.
time when I was discovering what to do, what I wanted to become in the future, I was walking around all these expos, like exhibitions for degree or like different industry exhibitions, and I came across a aviation expo, which I remembered I was handed out a voucher to go on take a trial flight. So a trial flight on a very small light aircraft. It was very cheap comparing now. So I took the voucher, I called the flying school and said, hey, I want to, why not come and have a tryout? So I booked an appointment. And I sort of fell in love with flying afterwards. So I
Hmm.
was like, oh, maybe I could become a pilot.
So was it something that I mean, because being a pilot, a female anyway, actually, too, is quite a difficult thing. Was this something that you had considered before going forward with it, or it just didn't matter to you at this point?
It didn't matter to me much at that point. When I told my mother about my decision to become a pilot and I would like to do an aviation degree, she was like, oh, wasn't expecting that. And she had her concerns, as you
Mhm.
correctly pointed it out. It's something rare and something different for like an Asian female to become an airline pilot, right? So, but she was very supportive, and she just told me, you just go try out, see how you go. So, yeah.
How did the process go? You decided you got a degree. You got a degree in aviation. You were doing remote work in your last year of the university because you were back in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Um, and what happens after you graduate? You just, I mean, how do you
Uh,
apply to become a pilot or?
so I got into my current airline via the cadet program. So basically, once I graduated, I applied for their cadetship, got in, very fortunate, and then they had to send me overseas, actually back to Australia again, to undergo further training. If
Oh,
that
interesting.
that took about 60 weeks, so just a little bit more than a year. And then
Wow.
after I graduated from the cadetship, provided my performance was satisfactory, they would offer me employment as a second officer. So that was
Mm-hmm.
literally my path of joining the airline. And I've
Mm-hmm.
been with that same airline ever since.
Well, so you never really ever considered a different uh, airlines elsewhere, flying.
Not at
Yeah.
this stage, never say never, but that
Mhm.
was mainly the reason I joined a cadetship because it was the only path for myself to join, say, in the aviation industry, based back in my hometown, Hong Kong. I could have joined other cadetships offered by other airlines, say in Australia, or there were other ways of getting into airlines, such as you had to start with flying light aircraft, say you have to fly the crop dusters and build your hours and then join the airline directly as a pilot, qualified pilot. But those paths would take a lot longer. So cadetship offered by, major airlines in the world would be a lot more easier and a lot more direct way of joining an airline.
Yeah, because I think I had a friend in Hawaii that wanted to be a pilot, and he had to go through. I guess you have to have certain number of hours or something like that, and he was flying cargo or stuff like that. Okay, so through a cadetship, it's much shorter. 60 weeks is 60 weeks. How long is that? That's a year and over a year.
Yeah, a year and 2 weeks, 2 months. So about 14 months.
Okay. Wow, so the whole time you were back in Australia again. So you said you've been with the airlines now ever since. So how long is that now?
I joined them as a cadet in 2008. I finished my training in 2010. So I literally joined the airline as a second officer in 2010. So I've been with the company now for 14 years.
Okay. And by the way, congratulations, because you made captain last year.
Thank you.
Right? It's almost been a year. So
it almost has been a year. You got a good memory.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be a big, huge thing. But you started as a second officer. So what's the difference between like a second officer getting up to captain? I mean, second officer, what did you do as a second officer?
Basically, second officers were cruise relief pilots, we call them. So they weren't responsible for any of the takeoff and landing duties in the front. We only needed second officers on, say, long haul flights, where say the flight's too long, so the captain or the first officer have to go to rest in flight breaks, because you just can't sit there for so many hours, right? So when one of them goes away for their little nap or their little rest, the second officer then sits in front, and what second officers do, they mainly help monitor the aircraft, do like fuel checks, monitor the flight path, and mainly a monitoring role. So more like an apprentice, also observing how the captain and FO, the first officer, do their jobs. So, not all, but most major airlines in the world have second officers. They're more like an apprentice, like working, learning while you're working.
Okay, and is that how do you get to first officer? Is it just the basis of working so many hours, or you have to take tests that said, "Hey, I learned all this stuff while I was"?
There's tests involved in the end. It also depends on the company at the time. That I was a second officer for 3.5 years. Some took longer, some took shorter, depending on the economy at the time, whether the company needed first officers or not. If they were expanding very quickly, they need more first officers, then they probably will promote a lot earlier. But 3.5 years, which I did, was mostly the norm at the time. But there were no flying experience required to be promoted to a first officer. You do need to take exams and evaluations to see whether you meet the requirement, or the company requirement, for a first officer position. And subsequently, if you pass, you get the training footprint, the course to be upgraded to a first officer.
Okay, so then what's the difference with first officer? Is you're like a co-pilot then with the captain.
Correct.
A lot more.
Correct.
Okay. And how long were you a first officer?
I was the first
before you
officer
became?
for uh, just under 10 years, so about nine and a half
Okay.
years, until I was promoted to captain last year.
Okay, is that a normal length of time too? Is it also based on economy and what happens?
Correct.
Uh,
Every airline is different. Some airlines, the promotion is a lot quicker. Some are a lot longer. But for
mhm,
my company, so I was, say, I served for about 13 years before I was promoted to captain. This is considered maybe slightly longer than normal, just
mhm.
because we had COVID-19, right, during the last 4 years,
Yeah,
and things were
yeah.
slowed down dramatically, and things were put on a halt. So once
Mhm,
COVID was finished, my company started promoting people again, and I
mhm.
was sort of the next in line. So I had an
Mhm.
opportunity to go for the command.
Yeah, what did you guys do during COVID then? I mean, how did they, because the airlines, it was just so, there's so much disruption in flights and things like that during that time. Did you, how was your airlines affected?
My airline was affected quite a lot because Hong Kong's policy was to shut the borders, as most countries and cities did initially. But
Mhm.
Hong Kong had its borders shut for a very, very long period. And because Hong Kong, being an international hub, um, shut its borders, so naturally no people could get in. You can get in, but
Yeah.
you just need to quarantine, right? So business people weren't coming in. So
Mhm.
my airline was affected. We were cutting flights.
Mhm.
We were grounding aircrafts, and everyone's going on, unpaid leave and all that
Mhm.
during COVID. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that must be hard. So like with a a month, within a month or something, were you flying at all during that time? I mean, you said it was shut down. I mean, it's kind of like Taiwan was pretty shut down, or a lot of the Asian countries are, shut down. But
mm.
did
I was
you?
actually I was flying all through COVID because
Well, okay.
despite that we have reduced capacity, we still had to maintain cargo flights. So
Mm-hmm.
I was flying a lot of cargo only aircraft. So
Okay.
basically, we're still using a passenger aircraft, but we have no passengers. We just fly
Oh,
the cargoes. We had to fly the vaccines. There were a small number of passenger flights because people still wanted to come in despite the quarantine, right? I was doing that as well. We had duties such as we call the closed loop duties, which means we do passenger flights and we go on duties for as long as 35 days. During that time, the government said we can't go home because we could be infected with COVID-19 transporting
right.
passengers. So they made us stay at quarantine hotels between duties. We cannot
Mm-hmm.
leave our rooms, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And after
Oh.
we finished a lot of duties, which is about 35 days worth, we were sent to another quarantine hotel for about approximately 14 days of quarantine until we
Mm-hmm.
prove that we actually do not have COVID-19. Then we
Mm-hmm.
can be released back to the community. So the whole closed loop duty took about a month and a half. So it was a
Mm-hmm.
month and
Wow.
a half away from home every time.
Right. So then once you were able to go back home, then you were there for how long before you had to do that cycle again of the 35 days? Must have been really
Um,
tiring.
yeah, we were off for about three weeks to a month or two at the
Oh,
most
okay.
before committing to another loop, we say.
Yeah, pretty strict on that. Wow.
Oh, it was crazy.
Well,
You think back now.
yeah, because for Hong Kong during that period of time, how long did it really literally last, really? I mean, was it
Hong
over a
Kong was
year?
only opened up. Oh, it was 3 years. Hong Kong only
Was
opened
it
up
was it three
early
years?
last year.
Gosh.
Hong Kong only
Oh,
opened up early, maybe March 2023.
2023. Was it stricter than Taiwan? Well, almost the
Yes.
same, right? Because I know I didn't want to travel because um Asia or Hong Kong and Taiwan is a lot different than the COVID precautions in the States and
Yeah.
stuff. But I didn't want to go on holiday and then have to quarantine for the first 10 days because I actually went to Hawaii. Hawaii, being an island, is more strict than mainland US. And then that would
Mm-hmm.
have made me have to quarantine for like 10 days. And then if I come back to Taiwan, I'd have to quarantine for 14 days. So already that was 3 weeks or almost a month of quarantine before you could do anything. So for me, I kind of just waited until, um, yeah, I didn't have all that time wasted between quarantine stuff. So yeah, I
I
didn't
think,
realize
yeah.
Hong Kong was that bad too.
I slightly different, I think, in Taiwan because eventually Taiwan moved to a home isolation
Hmm.
requirement. So you guys could
Yeah,
isolate or quarantine at home, which makes life a lot
yeah.
easier. Hong Kong never had that, so we have always been doing our quarantine in hotels. And you know how big
Wow.
hotel rooms are, right? And we
Yeah.
can't open the windows, and you just are stuck there for as long as 3 weeks.
Wow.
So Hong Kong, yeah, Hong Kong, I think opened up just slightly after Taiwan. Taiwan took a bit
Mhm.
to open up as well. But
Did,
yeah,
did did Hong Kong government pay for or did your airlines pay for all the times that you had to stay in the hotels? Because I know Taiwan
yes.
did. They were giving subsidy first, but then after a period of time, they stopped giving those subsidies.
For passengers, if you would say you willingly say to go back to the States and come back to quarantine, of course you've got to pay for your own hotel room. But for
Hmm.
air crew, our hotel rooms were paid for because we were carrying out duties on behalf of the company.
Okay. All
Mm.
right. So then the airlines paid for it, not like the government had subsidized. Oh. Well, well, we all, we're like all past COVID now, thank goodness. But you were talking about flying too, because you mentioned cargo and that you were there are like passenger planes too. But were they? Did you mostly fly long haul flights, or were you kind of doing regional stuff?
A mix. We were doing, yeah, actually, just a mix everywhere and
Mm-hmm.
anywhere when the routes were still available.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing, say, Frankfurt, uh,
Okay.
transporting vaccines and all
Mm-hmm.
that, but we were
Wow.
doing on a basis of like a turnaround flight. So we load 8 pilots on board at the same time. So we fly from Hong Kong to Frankfurt with four. The other four
Mm-hmm.
were resting in the cabin. And then when we get to Frankfurt 14 hours later, the
Mm-hmm.
other four takes over and fly back. So we do not have to stay in Frankfurt, and we could avoid the 3 weeks quarantine when we come
Right.
back to Hong Kong. Still, we had to quarantine to a certain extent, but not as long. So basically, we were in the middle tube for about 30 hours at one stage. We do such a long haul turnaround, we call it.
Okay. So, like for the different types of planes that you have to fly, do you have to specialize in that particular plane? Because there's so many different planes, I'm not sure about your airline's fleet. Like, I don't know how big it is compared to some of the US ones, but was it, did you choose to fly certain planes or that wasn't a choice that you were given? You
No, it
just
wasn't.
had
There
to,
wasn't a choice. But I've
okay.
always been on the Airbus fleet in my company. Since day one, I've joined. So
Okay.
I'm now a captain on the Airbus fleet as well. So I'm fortunate to be on the Airbus. I like the Airbus. There's a Boeing fleet in my company as well, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not up to us where we go. They
Oh,
allocated
okay.
it. Yeah.
Hmm. Because I was just wondering, I guess probably not, because, as a passenger in the back, planes are so different. So there's all these different seating sizes or whatever.
Mm.
But as a pilot, does the planes feel different or are they that different in terms of panel stuff? When
I
you're
think
switching.
the fundamental principle is the same, of course,
Hmm.
but different manufacturers make different type of airplanes to be different, but the fundamentals are the same. Say, I think
Okay.
this, like one switch does the same thing, but they probably
Right.
name it a little bit differently. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it just reminds me of, those movies when they have these airplane disaster things, and some guy, their pilot gets hurt, and somebody gets into the co-pilot, and he used to fly something before, and he's able to, push the right switches or something like that, and get the plane back.
The fundamental things are similar.
Yeah.
But you would need to be specifically rated on this specific aircraft to fly it. So I cannot fly a Boeing aircraft in my company.
Oh, okay, because you're specialized in the Airbus then. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Oh, so what's your typical normal outside of COVID? What's your typical schedule like? Do you, for a month? Do you guys?
I do about 80 to 90, I say outside COVID, 80 to 90 hours a month of flying, just airtime. So that does not count the time you spend preparing for the flight and wrapping up the flight afterwards. So I have on a range of 8 to 13 days off in a month where I'm completely free of duties. Yeah, that's a typical schedule.
8 to 13 days a month. So if we're looking at like a regular work job where you're off on the weekends, it's kind of, you guys have probably less 2/4. Oh yeah, almost the same.
Maybe almost the same or a little bit more in certain extent, but we do have to work on all the public holidays. There's no guarantee on whether you'll be off or not. So that's a downside.
Yeah, and the schedule. Yeah, your schedule is never like really exactly the same every month too, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So as a female pilot in the industry, because I know that there aren't just aren't that many female pilots, and there's a lot of challenges that go along with that. I mean, have you had? Well, what are some of the most challenging things that you've had to go through being a female pilot in the industry?
I think all in all, it was quite smooth for me. My company is very international. People are very open-minded and welcoming. And I'm definitely not the first Asian female pilot in the company. We are the minority, however, but most people, the most experience I've had were positives. Of course, there were the one or two odd person where would give out the odd comment, whereas that's based on your sex or not, or your race. It would, things happen, right? But my experience in the company, being a Asian female pilot, were mostly positive.
Okay. So, I mean, when you get these comments, are they from like, other nationalities, or are they not restricted to other nationalities? It's just, other Asians too, or what?
As far as I can remember, they were Caucasians, so white males, yeah.
Yeah.
But there weren't many of them, just, I could just remember one or two throughout my career. Or maybe I was too slow sometimes to get it, but, things happen, and you just gotta laugh about it and just move on, because that's their opinion only, right? So you just can't take it to heart.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go. I mean, you hear a lot of different stories, because you were talking about the first female Asian pilot, but I think the first female pilot when United or the major airline started, that was in the I think it was 1973, but the airlines had started operating and things like that in 1920. So it took like 50 years for women to get into being allowed to even be a pilot. So when was the first Asian female pilot? Do you remember or?
In my company, I think it was maybe 1994. She's
Okay.
actually a very good friend of mine.
Oh.
I've known her since I've flown with her when I was a second officer. She was my captain, and we've become very close friends ever since. I'm actually meeting her up for dinner tonight. But yeah, I think she joined in 1994, and she was the first Asian female
Wow.
for my company. Yeah.
Wow. So is she still flying, or is she still a captain right now?
Yeah, yep. She's a captain. She still is flying. Yeah.
Okay. So what is? I mean, I know we said we talked about first officer, second officer, and I guess of course the captain has got a lot more duties and stuff like that. But as a captain, what is the most important thing that you have to um, deal with in terms of
You're
your
basically the
responsibility?
last line of defense. Supposedly, all the crew should know what they're doing, right? Because we have a set standard operating procedures, and everyone should be familiar with it. You, as a captain, should be the most familiar with it, and because you're the last line of defense, you really have to monitor everyone whether they're doing it correctly or not, and give advice and take over if things are not going in the proper way. Because you're supposedly to have the most experience and the most capacity to manage the whole operation. Because it's right from when you're on the ground, so preparing for the aircraft, you're responsible for everyone, your crew, your passengers, and up until everyone gets off the aircraft.
And what's the length of time in general do pilots stay piloting, I guess you can say? I mean, is it stressful and how long do most pilots last?
The retirement age you're talking about, like how on average, how long do we stay in our jobs, right?
Yeah, or I guess, well, once you're it seems like once you're a captain, in one way, your job is a little bit lighter because people are taking responsibility for, for the operation kind of stuff. But in another way, it's heavier because at the end of the day, you're totally responsible for what happens on your crew or whatever happens on your flight, your crew and everything. So I guess I was asking, as a pilot and as a captain, once you reach captain, what's the average years that people stay in the job?
Up until retirement age, I guess, when one is,
Okay.
perfectly financially well equipped to retire. The retirement age for every airline is different. My airline is 65 years old.
Okay.
So I'm 38 now, so I still got about 27 years to work, which I don't plan on working for another 27 years. It's way too long. I can't imagine myself flying when I'm like a 65 years old woman.
Yeah.
But yeah. And having to stay up through the night, no, it's not for me. So, but everyone's different. I know some people still flying in their 60s, happily flying in their 60s. Everyone's priority and view in life is different.
Yeah. So being responsible for the whole crew and the whole flight, and I don't know, since you're fairly new as a captain, it's been less than a year, but has there been any time during any of the times that you've been on a plane, on a flight, whether it's at second, first, or captain, that something happened on the plane that you guys had to really handle or take care of, like whether it's like weather situation, really rough weather situations, or disruption on the flights or anything like that? Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Nothing major technical issues or incidents, fortunately, for me at the moment, up until now. But turbulence and weather, they happen on a day-to-day basis. Like every flight has weather, has turbulence, and so we consider those as just minor, not normal conditions.
Okay.
But if you're talking about like major incidents or major technical, like what some of the airlines have been experiencing for the past
Yeah.
month with Boeing aircraft, no, none of those, fortunately.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's because, it's an Asian international air company, and maybe there's not as many overall. There's a lot of international people that fly. It's not an overall, one block of people that might be rowdy or tend to create problems. I don't know. Is more a little bit more civilized uh, uh,
No,
in
I think every airline
Asia.
have their problems. Every
Yeah,
airline, have the good and bad apples. So maybe you just
yeah,
don't hear them, but there's always stuff everywhere.
yeah. So what's one of your favorite thing, or what is your favorite thing about being a pilot or working in the
Um,
space?
despite having to work in some public holidays, I do have, say, the weekdays off. I have considerably, maybe more days off on average than, like, say, a normal office worker. So, which I
Hmm.
could attend to some of the things, my hobbies and all that. Also getting to meet new people every time. You don't fly with the same crew every time. Yeah, cabin crew or other pilots. So you hear new stories, you meet different people, and if you're finding your first officer very unbearable this flight, you probably won't see him ever again. And I think the best thing is you don't have to bring work home. After a
Hmm.
flight, you just shut down, you just go home. That's it.
Hmm. So does the captain have a choice of the crew that he works with? Because you were talking about if there's
No,
a first
nobody
officer
has a
that's,
choice. No,
oh, so you just have to eat it, I
they
guess.
just have
It's just the
to
same as work.
they just have to endure
What?
me. Let's put it that way. If they don't like
Yeah,
flying
yeah.
me.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know if this is as a captain though, your markability is a lot better, right? I mean, is there any thoughts of what's the opportunities like in other airlines, or is this something that you don't ever think about because this airline is your airlines and you're
I definitely have thought about leaving this airline, based on the what happened during the past 3 or 4 years, right? Because of COVID,
mm,
we had a new contract, which was substantially a lot less than my previous contract I joined on. I
mm-hmm,
joined with initially. There are other opportunities out there in the rest of the world, namely, say, Taiwan, Singapore, the Middle East, for a captain position directly. Let's say if I had to go back to Australia to work, I could not join any airlines as a captain. I would have to start right from the bottom,
oh,
because most airlines are seniority governed. So everyone has to wait in line for their chance to get promoted. But some
wow,
airlines can recruit captains directly because maybe they
mm-hmm,
don't have the talent in their country where they're from, so they can do
mm-hmm,
that. So I've thought about moving elsewhere. That definitely could happen in the future, but not in the near future, I have to say. Um,
mm,
my I will stay with my airline, say maybe for the next at least about 5 years, until I could gain more experience as a captain. I would be more competitive for the market outside.
right. Well, that makes a lot of sense then.
Mm.
Okay, so Carrie, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your thoughts with us. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Sharon.
And yeah, and thank you all for stopping in to see the show. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.